and welcome to the Gracie Gatto podcast. I'm Gracie Gatto. Now, before we get into it, and we are absolutely going to get into it, I need you to understand something. What I'm about to walk you through is not a scandal. A scandal implies somebody slipped up. No. Or made a mistake or got caught. This is a system. And systems don't slip. Systems function exactly as designed, or at least close enough. So let's bring this story to the. Let's bring you into the story. Let's talk about Jim Rosenberg. Jim Rosenberg, who is about to be reelected to the Ethics Committee in Concord, the body that is supposed to hold public officials accountable, had to recuse himself from an ethics hearing. While Jim Rosenberg couldn't officially sit on that hearing, he's been consulting with city councilor Amanda Grady Sexton and Jenny Kratovic about another councilor. One who, if you connect about 3 dots, is about Stacey Brown. So he stepped aside from one proceeding, but he's still in the room, just a different room, whispering in different ears. That's not ethics, that's theater. So, and if you're Stacey Brown right now, I want you to hear this clearly. And I know you're joining me later today, so we're going to talk about this, but I want you to hear this. The people building a case against you went to consult with a man who looked at an adult teacher sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl, a child, and called it blurring the lines. And that is their advisor. That's who they trust. We're talking about the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, of course. So what does that tell you about their organization and what it stands for? What does that tell you about who they actually protect? And I'll wait. Now let's talk about Brian Harlow, because this is where it stops being a story and starts being a blueprint. So Jim Rosenberg reportedly recruited Brian Harlow to serve as a victim for the diocese. That's how Harlow enters this story, as someone Rosenberg brought in. Then the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence hired him. Then his nonprofit ended up upstairs from theirs, literally in the same building. And then, and I need you to stay with me here. Brian Harlow wrote an op-ed against HB 1675. Now, HB 1675 isn't just any bill. It's a bill to investigate the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, the very organization that hired him, that gave his nonprofit a home directly above their office. And according to Stacey Brown, that same Brian Harlow also wrote an op-ed against Stacey Brown mid-February. The same Stacey Brown that Amanda Grady Sexton and Jenny Kratovic are now consulting Rosenberg about. So let's add that to the list. The man Rosenberg reportedly recruited as a victim, hired by the organization, housed by the organization, writing op-eds against the bill that would investigate that organization, and writing op-eds against the counselor they're trying to take down. That's not a coincidence. That is a conflict of interest so thick you can cut it with a knife and serve it at one of their damn fundraising galas or whatever the hell they call them. So let me get this straight. The man who thinks a teacher abusing a child is blurring the lines is now the unofficial strategic advisor to the very organizations claiming to protect survivors. And the man they reportedly recruited as a victim is now their neighbor, their colleague, and their op-ed writer, deployed against the bill that would pull back the curtain on all of it. You can't manufacture this kind of irony. I don't have to. But I want to ask you something, because I think that this is a question underneath it all. What exactly do you get for consulting on ethics complaints against city councilors? Like, is it a seat on the ethics board so you can then protect those same councilors? Is that how this works? God, I want that job. So you do the favor. You get the seat. And then the seat becomes a shield. And that's how it works in Concord. Because as of last night, Jim Rosenberg is on that committee, re-elected and confirmed. Thanks to the puppets. That's not accountability. That's a protection racket with a parliamentary procedure. You cannot manufacture this kind of irony. I don't have to. Now, this is a lot to take in, I know. A lot of it, city councilors, blah, 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 blah. It's like, why the hell do I care? You should care because you're a taxpayer. And every time you get a property tax bill, you're paying for this garbage. You're paying for this. So that's why we should get angry, loud. You should absolutely write your executive counselors. Get involved because they're counting on you not to. This is the Gracie Gatto podcast. I'm Gracie Gatto. Please like and subscribe. Keep me independent. Till next time. Hello, hi, welcome to the Gracie Gatto podcast. I'm Gracie Gatto, and today we have Stacy Brown. Stacy, welcome.
Hi.
Oh
Thanks
God.
for having me. So in Concord in April, so it was just last month, the city manager's evaluation is due, and that is per our charter. And Concord is governed by city council, city manager form of government. So he is our one employee, and it's really important. And
What's
he
his name?
is, what's that?
What is his name?
His name is Tom Espel,
Okay.
and he has been the city manager since 2006. And he is the highest paid city manager in all of New Hampshire. He makes close to $250,000 a year. And his evaluation, which is our responsibility, changes every year, and it is incredibly opaque.
What does the city manager do?
So the city manager, he manages the city. He oversees all the departments in the city, and he answers to the city council. So he is our one employee, and we serve the public. So it's like you picture the public at the very top, and we take all their demands, and then we filter that to the city manager and say, okay, this is what the public wants. This is what needs to happen. We make the policy. He enforces it. So he serves us. He is our one employee. And then he manages all the different departments, like 13.
Okay, that's good to know, because it's really interesting how the civics works in the state of Concord. It's like who's who does what. So it gives
and it's different in every community. In others, they have a strong mayor. But what's really unique about Concord is that our school district is autonomous, which means they don't have to answer to, they don't have to take their budget to the voters. They don't have to take their budget to the city council. It's the only one in all of New Hampshire. And there's some crazy stuff happening where they approved $168.77 million for a middle school. And then they send that budget to the city council and like, we have to make it happen, which is just insanity.
Is it just like a blank check
coming out of nowhere? And it's just like a 9-person school board. So they do their budget in October. We do our budget. We're starting the budget season actually on Thursday. And, it's going to wrap up in June. It has to be done by mid-July because our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. Mm-hmm. So we know that, and they have a 12% increase on taxpayers. So we're going into budget season knowing that it's already going to increase on taxpayers. And the city manager has said, I recommend a 5.5% tax increase on top of that, which is just crazy.
So the more you're digging into like where the money's coming from, the more resistance you're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm asking, because I want to understand, when I make decisions at the council table, how is that going to affect my constituents' tax bill, their pocket, their ability to, live, a quality life in Concord? Like, what are they going to have left, to function?
Mhm.
So I'm really cognizant, I'm really paying attention to what's in our savings account? How are those savings accounts being used? And that was a huge contentious issue because they're
It's
supposed, go ahead.
it's sort of like a wife doing the bills, the books for the household, and you're saying, "Honey, why are we spending so much on printer ink?"
Right. Right. Well, in this case, I
Yeah.
don't even know where the money's going in some cases.
Yeah.
Like, the reserve accounts, there are capital reserve accounts, they're created for a specific purpose, like your vacation fund. And all of a sudden, the money is being taken out of your vacation fund and you didn't go on vacation. And you're like, where is it going? And that's
There's
when
a
the answer.
vacation fund.
Well, no, no, no.
Oh,
That's just
okay.
an example of like, or let's say
Because I
your
wouldn't put it
mortgage
past
or
Concord at this point.
no, oh my God.
Right?
It's just crazy. And like trying to explain it though too to my constituents, when they just
Yeah.
open their tax bill and they're like, why is this happening?
Mhm.
I want to be able to tell them, okay, this is why. And I feel like if we pay a lot in taxes, we should be able to say exactly where that money is going. You have a good quality of life. We have a great police force. We have great, trails. We have trash pickup. We have all these things.
Concord
That's
is
where the
so
money is going.
beautiful. It's a beautiful place. I love it.
Oh my God. And it's beautiful because, well, it was, the charter was accepted in 1853. Remember that because I want to bring
Oh,
that up later.
okay.
The charter was accepted in 1853.
Well,
So anyway, so what's that?
let's get into it now. I'm kind of curious. We have a
Oh,
flow going. Yeah.
okay. So this is pretty wild because there's this big celebration happening and there's a committee that's planning it and it's called the Concord 250 300th, celebration. So, because 250 years ago, our country was founded, 1776. So, 300 years ago, Concord was not founded. And that's kind of like this weird, like gaslighting story. Like, Concord is not 300 years old. And
Hmm.
it's like they just pulled it out. Like, so Pennacook was founded first, and that was in 1725. So 300 years ago, last year.
Hmm.
Concord didn't happen until 1853. They changed the name from like Rumford to Concord, meaning, but they meant it as like Concord, like, like we're a pleasant, we all agree, we get along, we concur, but we call it Concord. And that was in 1765. And so last night, let me see if I have the book. Oh, I don't think I have it with me. So Concord celebrated its 250th back in 2015. So if we celebrated our 250th, because that's when they changed the name to Concord, in 1765, and we celebrated 250 years in 2015, why are we celebrating 300 years in 2026? Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the math is a bit off.
No, I know it's
Issues with the mayor again.
yeah, again, because so the
Again.
city manager's evaluation is so important and it has to happen in April. So we follow the charter, the city charter and city rules. And that's what the city charter says. It has to happen in April.
Mhm.
So, I was kind of wondering we should be working on this. It's the council does it as a body. We do everything as a body, not individually. That's in our charter. And the mayor in a week, April 23rd, we have a 1 week left and we still haven't talked about the city manager, which is kind of weird. And I get an email that says I'm being excluded from this evaluation because someone asked him if I had a conflict and he talked to the city solicitor and just decided that I have a conflict. And you can't do that. He can't just make a decision. He is ceremonial head of the council. He kind of runs the meetings, but we all have equal weight when we make a decision.
Yeah.
So I pushed back on that, and one of the counselors, or the managers review committee that did meet at the beginning of April, I guess they came up with a survey and they were sending it out, and I was excluded. And they just decided this, it's one thing when you make a decision in a meeting, that way you can discuss it. And the mayor can make a ruling like, I think, actually any counselor can say, I think so-and-so has a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And then we discuss it like adults should. And that's what didn't happen. So he made his decision, and then the chair of the managers review committee, Councilor Jennifer Kretovic, said, no, I'm not sending you the survey. And it was like, and then May happened. And I was like, well, I'm going to put out my own evaluation about the city manager, because I have a lot of concerns. And I'm concerned about transparency, that the public doesn't know how he's being evaluated. And from what I've seen and just kind of compiling publicly available information, I'm really concerned. So I wrote my own evaluation, posted it on my website, sent it out as a newsletter, posted it on Nextdoor. I think it's on Facebook, because I think we should be talking about it. If there are issues,
right,
we need to discuss them. There's that great James Baldwin quote, not everything can be fixed, or but we have to, nothing can be fixed unless it's faced first.
right. We have to talk
exactly
about it in order to confront anything. In order to move forward, we have to say, okay, I have a problem, XYZ. This is it.
Right.
Let's work through it. Let's work through it.
Yes.
And nobody wants to work through it with you.
Right. And conflict is not a bad thing. Disagreeing is not a bad thing.
No.
It's really, it helps you to understand somebody else's perspective. And there's a whole range of
like exercising, moving a muscle that is a little atrophied. It's like, okay, well, I have this point of view, and if you give me new data, there's going to be some resistance, but I'm working through it as we're talking.
Right.
Yeah.
And, on the council, we have a way of communicating so that you can address conflict in a respectful way,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of follow Robert's Rules of Order. So we kind of discuss, and so like we may bring something up, and if we don't have a second, which means somebody else wants to talk about it, then we don't discuss it.
Yeah.
So one person can't just dominate, and then if the conversation's gone on for way too long, you can even say, I call the question, and that limits it, because then it's like, what, everybody's had a chance. We're beating a dead horse.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. So there are rules to help us address conflict, so that everyone is heard, and then we can really consider everyone's perspective.
But it's interesting that, you seem pretty reasonable, but like,
Thanks.
it's interesting that they paint you out to be difficult, crazy, conspiratorial,
right.
And but it's never about the work.
Right. I mean, that's because it's easier to disregard somebody, to just say, don't listen to them, they're crazy, than it is to actually consider what they're saying. And
we're getting a lot of that back channel stuff. And that's another thing I don't like about this town or the state, is the back channels. Don't talk to her. By the way, there's some people that iced me out on the podcast who won't even respond to my emails. And it sucks. Like Christian, I want to get to know Christian. I haven't really made an opinion about him yet publicly. Okay. And he has not responded. So it's like, there's a lot of weird back chat, like, don't talk to her. Don't talk to those crazy people.
Right. Well, that actually happened to me last night. Funny you bring that up, because a counselor, so one of the things, there's things called, there's an agenda that we follow, and the public gets it, and we can, there are some issues that are so important that we have to give the public 30 days notice in advance, and that's fair. And then there's other things that are kind of like housekeeping, that, you know, don't really require a lot of attention and can be approved all in one fell swoop. But sometimes counselors may see something and be like, hey, you know, I want to highlight this. I do want to talk about this. So if those items are on, they're called the consent agenda, you can pull them off and be like, look, I want to talk about this. I think this is important for transparency, or I have a question. So I had pulled something off the consent agenda last night, and I was just about to talk about it, to raise my concerns that I felt the public should know, when Counselor Chris Schultz automatically interrupted and said, I call the question, before there was any discussion. And I was like surprised. And I thought, well, maybe she just doesn't understand the process, because, you know, I didn't quite understand it. And during budget last year, when I was questioning a staff member about irrigation cost for the golf course, a senior counselor, Counselor Fred Keach, had said, call the question or move the question. And then the mayor said, the question has been moved. And we stopped talking about golf irrigation. Later, I found out, after I bought the book about Robert's Rules of Order, I was like, oh, wait a minute.
What is the Robert's Rule of Order? Just because I'm not familiar.
So Robert's Rules of Order, it's based on this, I think he was a military officer, Robert. And he came up with a way, you know, the structure of how to have a productive meeting. So you kind of follow the structure of this meeting. So, you know, the council follows it generally. They're, you know, like you would have to second something. And if you want to change an opinion or change an idea, you call it an amendment. And there's an order, like you agree on the change first and blah, blah, blah. So, but there are very specific kind of rules to ensure that everyone is heard.
That or disorder in the court, you know, like you see in those old Marx Brothers movies and stuff, where they're like, I second that. I amend that.
Right.
You know, okay, I get it now. So
yes.
I have to equate it to Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's tough. It can be hard, right? To kind of like internalize this way, because you don't normally talk that way.
Yes.
You know, like you might argue, like I'm one of 6 kids. So the way we discuss.
Are you the oldest or the youngest?
Second. I'm the second of 3 girls, and then there's 3 boys. Ooh. So, you know, you learn, you've got to jump in, you've got to talk. And if you want to be heard, they're not, you know, somebody may talk over you. So this is, you know, a really diplomatic way to ensure that everyone is heard, but you can get through the meeting and get a lot done. So so Chris Schultz, so this is called calling the question. And the reason that you have it is to cut off debate. That's the whole point, is to cut off debate, to limit debate. So Chris Schultz, who is a state rep, called the question and wanted to stop debate before it even started. And I was like, that's weird.
So she just wanted you to shut up before you even started talking.
Yeah. And I texted her a couple of times, and I called her, because, you know, I thought we had a pretty good, you know, relationship going into this. And I was like, wait a minute, she had no idea what I was going to say. You know, I wanted to point out that the city manager authorized cutting 255 trees in Memorial Field, and they were healthy. And when that happened, did not tell the preschool, the abutting preschool that had children on the playground right next to where 22 enormous, healthy white pines were cut. And they weren't. But Chris had no idea I was going to talk about that, because she didn't talk to me in advance. So I'm still trying to figure that out. It's a little strange.
Yeah, there's like a lot of weird activity since you've been an agent of chaos, to say it like that. But it's very strange though, like how they just kind of like mean girl you into a corner, and then when you push back and say, "Hey, wait a minute," and then they want to reprimand you for saying "ow."
Right, right. I know it's totally crazy, and I had concerns about a lawyer who was being appointed to the Board of Ethics last night.
Oh, let's get into it.
And, any of that stuff, has to be done in a non-public session. Mm-hmm. So it was late at night and I was like, you know what? I want to talk about this, but it was like, 10:30 last night. So I was like, let's table this and we'll go into non-public like in June at our June meeting.
Right.
And Councilor Grady Sexton wanted to recuse herself because she said she consulted his firm about an issue about city council, something having to do with city council. I'm like, that's interesting. Yeah. And then Councilor Kretovic jumped in and said she also talked to his law firm consulting about city council. And then Councilor Chris Schultz jumps in and says, well, shouldn't the counselor who you're consulting about also recuse themselves? And it was like, what are you talking about? It was just off the rails. Crazy. Oh, so yeah. So yesterday afternoon, after I had already, published my city manager evaluation, the mayor emailed me. He doesn't actually speak with me in person or call me, which is odd. I would think that you would want to resolve issues face to face. I think I got an email that just said he has rescinded his decision and I can participate in the city manager's evaluation if I wish. Which I thought was generous, but like he has no authority to prevent me from participating or, not preventing me, just.
It sounds like a bitchy mother-in-law.
Fortunately, my mother-in-law is great. But yeah, it was very, very strange.
It's funny when you start poking around, people start acting very weird.
Right. And that's when I'm like, oh, there's more going on beneath the surface.
Right.
It's kind of like if you're, like a paddler or something and you see the water eddy, and you're like, oh, there's a rock under there. Like, why is the water acting different above that?
And it's like, shh, Stacy, we don't want to know.
Right. I call the question. So we can't even find out I don't want to know what you're going to say.
So you're kind of like a bad rash in Concord. It's just like, you keep traveling. It's like, what about this? What about that? It's like,
I'm like, there's stuff that I'm finding. And then 4 days ago, something else happened. I got a call from a constituent of Councilor Kretovic's who said, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm the one who's been sending all those emails, all those letters. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, the letters. And so I looked and I didn't have anything on my, city official email. I didn't have anything on my personal email. And I thought, well, maybe, the letters that he's sending are being addressed by, into like it was sent, because sometimes people can say, hey, I have a parking issue, and that immediately is sent to the parking committee to address, which is great because that's what they deal with. So nope, it wasn't transferred to any committees. And so I said, well, why don't you just send me what you've been sending? And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was letters critical of the city staff and the city manager, and it was addressed to the city council, certified mail. We never got it. So I wrote to the city clerk and I was like, was there anything sent to the city council from this person about this topic? And all of a sudden, the deputy city solicitor sends 41 pages of documents of back and forth between this person and the city. And I read through it, and it had been going on for a couple of months.
Did you send a right to know request, or did you send a right to know request, or this?
No, I just said, hey, was there anything that was supposed to come to the city council?
And so you had to ask to get it.
Yeah. I had to ask. It wasn't sent to us. So then I realized that in the packet that was sent to us, the letter addressed to city council was not included. So the letter that said, hey, city council, I want you to be aware of what's going on, with the city manager, with the city staff. So I wrote back to the deputy city solicitor and I said, can you tell me why this letter was not included in the packet you just sent out and why we didn't receive it sooner? So then she sent it out to the entire council and said, whoops, I should have included it, but the city solicitor's office held it until we resolved the issue. So I find that very interesting that communication from residents is being held. City council didn't know about it.
Yeah.
This person wasn't told that it was being held, and it was only after I drew attention to this letter that everyone else got it. So
Ooh, that's shady.
yeah, I was like, there, and he sent it via certified mail. So the city received it April 2nd. April 2nd. That was when the city managers review committee met. I don't, the city solicitor's office just decided. So that's kind of interesting that the city solicitor's office decides to hold a letter critical of the city manager during the month he's being evaluated by the city council.
Fascinating. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And
Yeah,
it's campaign season, people. We need to vote these people out.
I know, but it's like it's only May, Gracie.
I know.
Like it's not until not this year, it's next year, not until next
So we're
November.
stuck with these people till next year. We need more citizens to start asking questions and pushing back.
Well, you know what's
That's what
so
we need.
upsetting to me, especially about what just happened with that resident who sent certified mail addressed to the city council, is that I've been telling people, hey, if you have something, send it to the city clerk and ask that it be shared with the council. Because that way we're all getting the same information and that way we can all address it. It's like I walk all the time. I'm at the library. I'm in a lot of public spaces. So people will bump into me and say things.
You don't want to
And
be, you don't want to do the whole Nancy Drew bit. You just, right?
I love Nancy Drew. I love Nancy Drew. I grew up. That was like my first book that I read as a kid was Nancy Drew and the Lilac Inn, Mystery of the Lilac Inn. Loved it.
Yeah.
So, but that's concerning that I'm telling everybody this is how you can communicate with us, and it's being held. And we're not seeing it until it's resolved. What if it's never resolved? Does that mean we never see it? Yeah.
This setup has worked in the past, but I think with 21st century technology and everybody's got an iPhone, everybody has an opinion, and everybody has social media. It is so you can't get away with this stuff anymore. That small town, back channel stuff. I mean, it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, because everybody's screenshots. Everybody has a tip.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been great. So and like I love our library. I love our library so much. I love going back and reading old documents. And actually you can go on to like UNH and you can look up past annual reports.
Yeah.
So, that's how you can see. And I love seeing the history of how do we get here? Not only how do my decisions impact taxpayers now, but how did previous counselors' decisions bring us to the point we're at? Like I have some incredible shoes to fill. There were like some amazing people who were Ward 5 counselors, and one of them was Marjorie Swope. So the library, the Concord Library has this option where you can do research and learn. You can go online and they have Newsbank where you can read old newspaper articles.
Oh, I love that stuff.
It's so great. So I typed in the city manager's name and I compiled all these articles from the past year. And it was like, when you look at it all at once, you're like, whoa, we have to address
did do the Nancy Drew bit.
Fun. It's great. Everybody can though. That's what's so great. And that's what's so great about public libraries is that information is accessible.
What do you say to someone who is a voter, who's just someone who, who's curious about this stuff but doesn't know enough? Like, what can they do? What's the call to action? Like, what can a normal citizen do to help the city council along and get things done so there's not this back channel stuff happening?
Well, I really, that's one way to get involved is like, you have an idea. How can we improve things?
Yeah.
And reaching out to your city councilor is a good way. Looking up the ordinance, like what exists now. Maybe you can do it. So that was kind of how I got involved. And I watched a lot of city council meetings, and the question started like, first of all, I don't think chickens are really public safety, but then why isn't public safety meeting at all? That was another like big question.
Yeah.
And then it was 2 years later that they decided not to change the ordinance. And yeah, I know. And so I was really disappointed. And my daughter had canvassed 5 out of 10 wards, petitions, called counselors. She'd done all kinds of things. So it was a really good exercise. And of course I was there because she was like 9, 10, 11. And, but then I'd watched so many meetings and I was like, oh, this isn't that hard. They're humans, like, and I was reading the agendas, listening to all the, attending committee meetings. My daughter testified at multiple meetings. It was so adorable. But when I heard my counselor was stepping down, I was like, all right, I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how I got involved.
That's awesome. So, let's talk about let's talk about the elephant in the room. The bad stuff that's been said about you. A lot of the stuff about your husband being a cop. You have a conflict of interest. I had one person tell me that they don't believe anything, a word you say, because you're married to a cop and that he probably beats you.
And
Um, yeah,
oh, hilarious.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right.
let's address it. Let's address some of that stuff, shall
Yeah.
we? Yeah.
Yeah, well, actually, some of those rumors are being perpetuated by some counselors. Some of the counselors I've named
Mhm.
are actually, because I was campaigning and Counselor Kretovic was supporting my opponent, and I heard from constituents who said that she was telling people I couldn't vote on homeless issues because my husband was a cop. And
That's where that started?
oh yeah, yep, yep. It's trying to, and then
Wait,
there was
this
a push. They didn't want me to vote on a street closure because the street closure was going to have a cop there. So
Mhm.
it was like, what? So I feel like this whole push against saying, well, you can't vote on the city manager's evaluation or you can't participate is part of that drive to be like, oh, she can't do anything on the city council because her husband is a city employee
Mhm.
because he's a cop. So I feel like it's trying to paint me with this broad brush that I have too many conflicts to be effective.
Wow, it really is like projection much, right?
Oh, very much so. Because what I've discovered is some of the people that are harping the loudest about my conflicts of interest actually have conflicts of interest themselves.
That's really
Yeah. So, yeah, Councilor Grady Sexton let's see, she came on the council in 2010, was immediately put onto the public safety board.
mhm.
And then in 2012, she became the chair of the Public Safety Board. And in 2012, all of a sudden, Concord had a domestic violence unit that was stood up. And then the cops were participating in a commercial for the crisis center, of which her organization oversees, as she's the public affairs director. Wow, that's really convenient that you have city staff, participating in a commercial for your business, for your, employer. How convenient. Yeah, so I find that very interesting, and also the city has been giving money to the crisis center for years, and I noticed that in the budget detail
So
that yeah.
so how is Concord paying into the coalition? How does that work? The New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence.
I mean, there's some that's a thread that I and a lot of other people are pulling because it's just really questionable. Um, really strange things like Counselor Amanda Grady Sexton, who is the lobbyist for the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, was also the highest paid lobbyist by Henry T. Nicholas, and she used city council chambers to promote that a bill by this guy who is a billionaire sexual predator, which is bizarre. And she wasn't the only counselor who was at, she scheduled the meetings though, and there's an agenda. And the mayor, Jim Boulay, who's also a lobbyist, and his staff they were also part of that meeting. So that's kind of weird. Why are council chambers? You can't rent it out. It's not like a room in the community center. It's not like a park. It's pretty official. Why were they meeting with the assistant attorney general to promote this bill that's funded solely by a billionaire sex predator? Weird. So there's just some.
Why is the coalition even doing business with someone like that? And there was an article written, there was a quote where Councilor Amanda Grady Sexton actually stuck up for the Henry T. Nichols.
Called him a crime victim.
Called him a crime victim.
A crime victim.
And this is the guy who had like sex layers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird.
So the more I talk to people, so I testified in favor of House Bill 1675 because that was, and this is what I think is very interesting, is that bill was about transparency. This is an organization that receives state, federal funds. Hey, there should be transparency. There should be commission kind of looks at this. And their executive director testified, we could have had hundreds of people here, but we told them no, what you're doing is too important, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I looked at their Facebook page to see how they portrayed this, and they didn't list the bill at all. They made it sound like, this House Bill 1675 is going to attack victims.
And then we started getting other state reps who were parroting that same stuff. Yeah. And then started seeing Facebook posts, and I was a part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so I'm hearing from other people who have not been served by the crisis center. In fact, I had a constituent tell me how upset she was. Her daughter was really struggling and had a newborn and a 1-year-old and was kicked out of the crisis center. She was in the crisis center in Concord and was told she had 4 days to leave in winter. And, my friend said her daughter was stable, and that absolutely destabilized her. And this makes me angry because the city council was the pass-through, or the city was the pass-through of $500,000 in HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Public Facilities Funds, for the crisis center to purchase this building. There was a building to purchase office space. Mm-hmm. Well, I went by that office space and it says that they have staffing shortages. But you know what they don't have a shortage of? Lobbyists. They have plenty of them at the legislature lobbying against bills that would empower victims. So a lot of questions, and I hope people keep coming forward with their experiences with the crisis center, because I think it's very different from how it's portrayed. And I was on the community development committee when we were considering this $500,000 grant, because you're like, that sounds great. When it came to us, they said, we serve 1,700 people, and 75% of them are in Concord. Are served in Concord. It's Merrimack County, 1,700 in Merrimack County, but most of them are in Concord, 75%. But then when it came to the council making that, so that was the committee, we approved it, said, yes, this is a good idea, came to the council. One person testified, and he was like, hey, I know somebody who, reached out to the crisis center and was told, nope, there's no room, sorry. Another person reached out and said, hey, my boyfriend dislocated my shoulder. I can't drive. Can you give me a ride to the courthouse to file a restraining order? And they said, nope. So I'm like, And then that person said, we serve 400 people around in Merrimack County, not 1,700, and certainly not just Concord, 400. And then I go by there and their offices say, staffing shortage.
Wow.
So curious. So definitely something to keep Nancy Drew looking into.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Stacey, thank you so much for your time as always.
Thank you so much for all you do. I really appreciate it.